Welcome to Dr. Crystal's podcast, Inspiring Sacred Stories. I am your host, Dr. Crystal, a doctor of East Asian medicine and a holistic transformational coach. Here we will shine light on wisdom keepers, paradigm shifters who inspire us to live thriving, joyful lives. Let's be inspired. Although I am a doctor of East Asian medicine, this podcast is for educational and inspirational purposes only. It does not replace professional medical advice. Please consult a qualified healthcare provider for guidance on your personal health needs. Hello, welcome to the Dr. Crystal podcast, Inspiring Sacred Stories. I am so delighted to introduce to you my good old college roommate who there's just so much. I'm so delighted to have her. She is a multidimensional woman, a woman on fire. She is a certified holistic life coach, feminine embodied guide, teacher, retreat leader, and dream oracle. That is the part, dream oracle, because let me tell you, many moons ago back in college, you were a dream oracle then, because Amanda and I used to, when we were roommates, we would chit chat, we would solve the world's problems, we would break it down, and we would also wake up and share our dreams and analyze our dreams. And we've lost touch, and then we kind of would weave back in, and then lately this past month, I think it all started because I was like, Amanda, I had this dream. What do you think it means? And it was like a dream that I was like, what? You know, the ocean and being underwater and finding pockets of oxygen. And like, we started breaking it down. And then ever since, we've just been chit-chatting and solving the world's problems again. And I was like, damn, this is a podcast. And it's because of you and reconnecting that I felt I'm going to do this. And so I'm just so grateful to have you. And I would love to start with, what does sacred mean to you?
Ooh, that is a great question. I feel like our life is sacred. I feel like not everybody gets a chance to come to Earth School, and we come to Earth School and we just begin to learn about being in this body, moving through this world, and the way things work here, and just how to do life, really. And so for me, I feel like it can be as sacred as my frothy coffee in the morning to being in a retreat with women and doing deep work, transformational breath work, and dreaming. Dreaming is so sacred because it is a part of our subconscious that we can really tap into and use it for our intuition. It's this very feminine, juicy place that we can move into to kind of help guide us. And I think yeah, that's really where dreaming for me feels true.
Yeah, coffee talk. That's sacred, right?
Yes.
Oh, and breaking
Coffee
down
talk is sacred.
solving the world's problems. So it's all about inspiring sacred stories. So what is on your heart that's inspiring and sacred, that story that you'd love to share today?
Well, I think, in talking about, I mean, there's so many different things, I could talk about that I feel has been sacred in my life and even recently. But the dreaming thing, I don't, it's always been there. And at times it's more prevalent than others. But, you're right. That's kind of when I noticed the dreaming thing. I feel like I've always been a dreamer, but I really noticed it in college. And then we would remember dreams, and not everybody does. I have people that come to me and say, I don't remember my dreams, or if I do, I immediately forget them, or do I even dream? And everybody just does dream. It's just really tapping into that place where we can remember it. So I think that's the sacred story I'll share, is like how I kind of got into the dreaming part of the work that I do,
Right.
because
Because you've went and studied deep with the Toltec, and back in college it was just something we played with, and now it's like you've gone deep. You have wisdom now. You've studied with wisdom keepers in
yeah.
Mexico. Yeah.
Yeah. Dreaming, I think, started in college. And it was like, well, the first time I really realized, I mean, dreams were always fun. It was like I'd wake up and be like, oh, and we would talk about, what does this mean? And we were traveling on a boat, and, we try to kind of dissect it. I kind of studied a little bit in college, the Jungian piece of it, which I still kind of use, and then, Freudian pieces. And, I think I did a research paper on it in college. Um, and then, and then when it really hit me that like, how do I work with this other than just fun? Like, what does this mean? And kind of exploring was when I was getting ready to graduate and I was thinking I was going to move to Colorado.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
was like, do I go? Do I not go? Should I go? I was like writing all the pros and the cons and trying to, be logical about it. And then I was journaling and I was like journaling and praying. And I was like, just show me an answer.
Mm,
And in my dream that night, I don't remember the dream, but I remember waking up and going, it's a no. It's not it.
mm. I
Like
love
feeling
that.
it. Yeah, feeling it in my body and really going, oh, so you mean I can like work with this to like touch into my intuition and really know
Mm.
when I'm struggling with something or just want an answer, how do I do this? So, yeah,
Wow, that's profound. I mean, that's some old wisdom, to say show me is my understanding the unconscious mind wants to solve a problem. So you gave it a problem to solve and woke up with the answer.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. And then from there, it was like, I don't know, I've played with it over the years. And then, like you said, I went to kind of got intertwined with the Toltec. And one of my coaches is a dreaming coach too. And she studied with Don Miguel Ruiz, who wrote the Four Agreements.
Oh, yeah.
She journeyed with him and she was really deep in the Toltec work. And they have a whole nother set of like the dreaming, the way that they kind of interpret dreams and move through this world is actually just a dream, that we're moving in. So that's been really juicy to get in. And then that became another layer of really understanding and working with my dreams in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to have a mentor who would always want to know my dreams, and then she would give me feedback on what it meant. And I recently listened to this talk with an acupuncture, kind of some master acupuncturist, and they said they were explaining or reminding me that in Chinese medicine, there's this belief that the spirit leaves the top of the head when we sleep and goes into the stars to get mandates and information and brings it back down into the body. And that indigenous people, the dreaming it didn't always mean just a message for me, but maybe for the whole tribe.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah. And how do you, when you're coaching, do you use the dream work in your coaching?
Yeah. I mean, I do because sometimes dreams come through as we're working together. And the feminine, because I do feminine embodiment coaching. The dreaming is just one facet of it. And I've done dream workshops and we've done dream retreats and I've participated in dream retreats. And it's really juicy when women get together and it's like the intention is to kind of collectively hold the dream,
Mm,
and whatever comes through. So, we would go to sleep and we would do different practices and different kind of ceremonies and things like that, and then we would go to sleep and in the morning the first thing we'd get our coffee and kind of have coffee talk, sharing our dreams as the collective, and then we ask questions, and a lot of it is intuitive. I mean, there are some structures around what things can mean, but really you're the dreamer. And so it's like, what do things mean to you? So being able to share that in the collective and then, other women going, oh yeah, what's really wild is when you do that and somebody goes, I had a super similar dream. Like we were over here, or people are playing in their dreams together, and like, oh, you were in my dream last night. Well, what were we doing? And that's really, really fun. But I do think that what I've been taught anyways from like the ancient Toltecs was like the women were the dreamers and we would dream into the collective and a lot of times bring that in and of course we were moving in a more feminine time than anyways, like as a whole. Even the men were moving in a more like feminine connected way than we are now in this patriarchal way that we're more intellectually driven. But, the women would dream and bring it to their men, and the men would kind of sit and be able to then implement, whatever came through, through
Mm,
spirit. And that's how like villages moved, and that's how things got done, and that's how we listened on a
right.
different level.
That's when they trusted the feminine oracle, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when I lived in Nashville, I had a dream of this tornado coming and that I was outside um, trying to tell everybody this massive tornado is coming and nobody knew and nobody would listen. I'm like, it's coming, it's coming. And I woke up and I was like, I think that was a message. Like, I don't always get downloads like that. They're rare, but it was so clear. I was like, I was told that. And then and then it was like, I think a week later, I mean, I don't know the timeline honestly, but it was soon after there was a huge tornado coming and I met with two men actually, and I said, I don't remember their names, but I was like, and somehow it just worked out that I was with them and I was like, can we just sit and pray and surround Nashville with love and light? And let's really try to move that storm because it was headed for East Nashville where we lived. And so we did. And I spent days waking up and praying and like talking to the storm and asking for it to move and seeing like this protective light come around downtown Nashville, East Nashville, and just tried to have it like grow. And I really focused on it. And I remember, even Maya remembers when the storm came, we had to go to our bathroom. Scott had to go downstairs in Dell in their basement. And I'm holding Maya. She's just a baby, like 3, 4 years old. And we had to wait for the storm to pass. And the tornado was coming for east side, but it went more on the west side. And I was like, oh God, not saying I had any control in that. That is way greater than me. But somehow maybe I got the message because it was like, you need to pray or your house is going to get smashed. You
Yeah.
know, like,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
that's wild. Yeah, that's like a prophetic dream, You're you're tapping in and seeing and know, and some people like see it, and some people just know it, but or it comes through in a dream and like you knew a storm was coming.
Yeah.
It's wild. Yeah.
I just love that when we were young, you were so into it. And now here you are, still into it, more embodied, more grounded, and it's part of your everyday life. Like that just I don't know, that just it's funny like we know certain things when we're younger and we don't even realize we know it, right? Or
Yeah.
like what am I going to do? What's my path? And then all along you kind of always knew that like you were meant to be this intuitive, wise woman guiding other women, doing your sacred work, inspiring, uplifting, so you have a Facebook group, right, called Women Feminine on Fire?
Feminine on fire. It's funny when you say that though. Like we get messages, right? And I mean, most of us are so tuned out to that, or you know, I don't know, we shove it off. We're like, oh yeah, whatever. I heard something or I thought something or I had a dream. It was probably nothing. I hear that a lot and I'm thinking, tell me your dream when they say it was nothing. I'm like, how did you feel when you woke up? Was it really nothing? Even nightmares and things like that. I mean, some of it's just our subconscious working through things. And there's some times where we just have something called daily residue, where it's like, you saw a red Volvo or something when you were driving down the road, and then it came through in your dream. It's like, did it mean anything? I mean, maybe there's questions to ask to see if it really meant something, or sometimes it's just you processing, just what you picked up, daily residue. But I remember like when I was like 13 or I think it was around 12, 13 years old, and I was in my childhood room and I was getting dressed. It was like a non-moment. And I didn't remember this until I was having to write about coaching when I went to apply to get my coaching certification and why I wanted to do it. And it came through as a memory that I was changing my clothes And I always thought I wanted to be a teacher, like a elementary school teacher, or like
Mhm.
something like that. And it came through. It was like, you're going to be a teacher, but it's not going to be in the way that you think. And I was like,
Whoa, at 13?
uh-huh.
Shut the front door.
I know.
That
And it
is so cool.
so wild. And then I thought, went on and, studied yoga and became a yoga teacher or whatever. And then now, doing these kinds of teachings. And then when I went to apply for to become a holistic life coach, it was like, why do you want to? And all this thing. And I kind of just it just came through as a memory. And I'm like, oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's another layer of how
Mhm.
we get messages and then we don't pay attention or it comes back later and you're like, oh yeah.
Well, let me ask you about daydreaming because I also with that acupuncture teacher, they talked about the astrology and first I'm gonna back up a little. Okay, yeah, I watched that class first, but there's two parts I want to share right now. So they talked about well, no, I'll share this part first. So I did this breathwork exercise last Friday, and I was like, I just want clarity, and so we're laying there and we're doing the breathing, and sometimes breath work is really intense, and it can also create a psychedelic experience. You can have visions, you can have a dream, and I got this message really clear about the importance of honoring the wisdom of the stars and understanding the language of the stars and honoring the earth the way that the original people did. That it's really important. It's a time that we need to go back to that. And I woke up like, oh, Lord, okay, time to get woo woo again. Like, shit, sorry. And and then I listened to these teachers, and they were talking of they're astrologers. I'm not an astrologer, but I've always dabbled in it like you, and my mom always was into it and whatnot. But they talked about come February 20 something, 2026, something's going to happen with Neptune and Saturn. They're going to come in conjunct, and it's already influencing us now. It's somehow it's a big deal. I don't know how it's a big deal, but then they started sharing about how Neptune's all about the dreaming and the illusion, and then Saturn's the teacher and the discipline, and how that it's really important right now to be writing down, journaling our dreams to get the messages, not only for us, but for the collective, and then to use Saturn, that discipline, to bring the dreams down to earth, and that we can dream in together a better world was sort of the final message that I got. But they also talked about the importance of daydreaming
Hmm.
and like
Yeah.
taking the time to when we were in college, we had time to sort of walk, and like I can remember laying in grass, watching the clouds float by, you know. And so what do you think about that? Like that making that time to daydream, to tap into that intuitive, that part two to get and receive your intuitive messages.
Yeah. I mean, well, first of all, I think that's a beautiful message you got.
I know.
And
Yeah.
think about that, like even from a form of daydreaming or meditation or just downtime. I mean, we're so flooded right now. We're on our phones, the computers and work. And I mean,
Mhm.
it's wild. Like I can't, I have to disconnect from that because it overloads my nervous system to be
Mhm.
just so I mean, yeah, the looking up at the clouds and being with the stars and like I mean, even if it's 10 or 20 minutes a day where you just drop everything, get quiet, and allow a download to come through if it comes through, but to quiet the mind because we're so busy in our minds, we can't hear
Mhm.
or, we're tuned out to that. And so it's like to we're tuned out to that, which is really what we want to be tuned into. So we have to tune out the other stuff, if that makes sense. It's
Oh,
like
there's so much noise.
so much noise.
So much information that if we don't have sacred pause, go into the cave, we're not going to be able to hear our higher heart, our higher wisdom, or even whatever your higher power is. So I don't know why, but when you were talking, it's like, do you remember you showed this to me, and I still love doing this. getting in the car on a country road and playing music
Oh yeah.
and just
Yeah.
like cruising along on those country windy roads, jamming out. In a way, that's daydreamy.
Yeah, yeah, because you're not tuned in to all the noise, nature, you're out in nature, you're listening to music, and music can get you in your body and in your feels. And yeah, that's when like messages come through. I mean, and looking at the clouds, I have done that since, college. Every once in a while, I'll go be in my hot tub
Mhm.
and I'll look up at the clouds and I'll see things. I'm like, wow, that looks like a dinosaur. And just
Mm,
allowing yourself to even feel into imagination too.
mm,
But a friend of mine and I would do that. We would get up early for a period in our life when we had more space. Um, and we would go walk and we would lay down at the end and the sun would be rising. We'd get up really early and then we'd see the clouds and the sunrise and we would just lay there. And I think about that a lot. Like, I want to do more of that, even if
yeah.
it's just a little bit every day so that you can, and of course, I too, and you probably do this too. It's like, I ask for signs and I look for signs and,
Mm,
as things are happening in nature, my hawks are kind of my jam. And like when I see one, I'm like, okay, all right, and like kind of, it makes me pause and think whatever I'm thinking about or whatever's coming through. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, all right. I'm on that track. So,
right. Oh, I love that. The archetypes and the symbols and interpreting it. It just brings a little more magic into life and joy. And and also that spaciousness is the feminine way, which is, I
yeah.
know, something that you teach. And so, as we close up, I'd love to hear what is a sacred practice that maybe you do as a ritual or maybe that you do on a daily basis, but what's a practice that you'd like to share with everybody?
Well, two things come to mind when I think of something that really brings me in to my body is yoga. I get on the mat. And I mean, I, I talk to people a lot because I'm also a realtor, and as I'm moving in that world, I came in the other day to the office and said, oh, I do yoga too. We should start a yoga class. I was like, hey, we can. And somebody popped over and was like, I can't even touch my toes. I was like, yoga's not even really about standing on your head and touching your toes, but just creating that pause to slow down the mind, get into your body, be able to breathe deep because I don't always go into a full-blown yoga practice. Sometimes I get on my mat and I roll around and I get quiet and I soften my breath. And I mean, sometimes I get my roller out and just, roll into my muscles. So it doesn't have to be anything crazy or anything super structured. It's just give yourself the downtime to do that. So I have to pause sometimes and do that. And then the other thing that's really a sacred practice to me is nature,
Mm,
hiking and walking in nature. And that really grounds me, gets me into my body and gets me out in a different field. And I get a lot of downloads. I get a lot of
mm.
like it's not always creative time. Sometimes it's just downtime, but I do get a lot of like creative ideas as I'm hiking because there's something about walking in nature and like the rhythm, it's like a walking meditation when I'm hiking. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
another one that feels really juicy.
Oh, I love that. So, how can people reach you, Amanda?
I have a website. It's amandalunorth.com. And then also on Instagram, I'm the Amanda Lou North. And yeah, all my information's on my website. I'm going to be doing some upcoming retreats in 2026 and maybe doing some groups too. I'm just feeling into what's going to be coming in 2026 because, like you said, it's going to be a juicy year. And I'm going to look up the Neptune and Saturn thing because I think I've heard a little bit of that in the ethers
Yeah.
too. So yeah, that's what will be coming. People can work with me one-on-one too. I work with women, helping them deepen into their feminine wisdom, and we do all sorts of practices from somatic to, mindset work and things like that. So it just kind of depends on what's up for people and how I can hold space for them as I'm coaching them into their next phase of life.
Oh, so juicy. Thank you so much, Amanda, for being
Yeah,
here.
thank you. This is so fun. So much
Yeah.
fun.
Well, thank you all for joining the Dr. Crystal's podcast, Inspiring Sacred Stories. Until next time, stay inspired and find the sacred in everyday life. Thank you for joining me on Dr. Crystal's podcast, Inspiring Sacred Stories. If today's episode lifted you up, I'd love if you shared it with a friend, subscribe, leave a comment. It helps more people discover these stories of light and transformation. And if you'd like to work with me more closely, head over to www.drcrystalkinnunen.com. And as a thank you for listening to the show, you'll receive $20 off your first session. Details are also in the show notes. Remember, in this time of rapid change and transformation, you are not alone. You are part of a greater shift, and your inspired life matters. Until next time, let's be inspired.